In today's video, it's gonna get bouncy. You're gonna learn how to use a mesh deformer to control high polygon objects and soft body dynamics. Don't miss this one. Hey everybody, it's Nick again from Greyscalegorilla.com, where we bring you the tools, training, and tutorials to help you become a better motion designer. Now, if you're new here, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, where we have tons more tutorials like this, and even a podcast, all designed to really help your career go forward and help you become the best motion designer you can be. All right, today's video is all about soft body dynamics, and specifically how to control high polygon objects using a low polygon cage to get soft body dynamic looks. This is really important if you're trying to make really high polygon objects look like it's soft body without really slowing down your machine. So if you've ever been confused about soft body dynamics, don't miss today's tutorial, and in fact, let's get right to it right now.
So, first of all, I should say, this is no replacement for real modeling. What we're trying to create is a low poly mesh that will deform a high poly mesh. So let's grab our high poly first, and that's gonna, I'm gonna use, it's in the sculpting menu. I'm gonna use this Tyrannosaurus Rex to kind of flop around. So, we're going to go to base meshes, and we're going to go to Tyrannosaurus Rex. If you don't have this, any kind of biped thing will work. All these techniques will work on any symmetrical object. So we're going to get into symmetry. We're going to get into all this stuff. But what we have, if we turn on our lines, is a pretty high poly object. And in truth, we could probably use this as soft body to begin with, right? We could just add a soft body object and combine all this together and see if that'll work. The problem is our teeth are separate from our tongue, is separate from our body, and there's just no real easy way to have them all interact with soft body geometry. So what we want to do, and I should also say that if this was even higher poly, if this was like a super technical robot, like with little bolts everywhere and like all these little bevels and stuff, then it would be really hard to just throw a soft body object on this and have it flop around with any sort of speed, right? So we want more control, so we're going to build our own cage that's going to go around this mesh so that our soft body is on the cage, and then this mesh will be deformed. So let's figure this out. So here's the technique Chris taught me that's been helping me a lot when I've been playing around with this stuff. And what we need to do is we need to go to our side view. Now, we're going to use sweep NURBS to kind of create a sweep that is going to go along the edge of his body here, and then go along his feet and go along his arms, and then we're going to combine it all together with some basic modeling tools and create this mesh. So let's start. I'm going to grab a Bezier curve, and I'm going to start drawing a Bezier curve. Now, if you haven't played with Bezier curves, you basically click and drag in the direction of where you want this curve to go. And we're going to get as close as we can to our object here, and it doesn't have to be perfect. We can tweak it later, but I do want it to be close, and that is because this object is going to end up being the fake for our soft body. And if our fake is much larger, our cage, think of it like a cage. If our cage is much larger than our real object, then there's going to be some collision errors when it hits a wall, or if he bounces around and he's hitting the floor. The cage is going to deform the main mesh, which means that the collisions won't be accurate, right? So if this was way up here and it hit something, it wouldn't look correct. So we want to get close, but we don't have to be perfect. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this spline, and we're going to copy and paste it and make a duplicate spline that's identical. The reason we do that is we need the exact same number of points on both splines for this to work. So let's grab our move tool, and let's just start grabbing these down and adjusting our handles and making new points with these handles, and they're gonna match up here. So you're gonna see this kind of in a second once we kind of set all this up. But for now, you just need to move your points down, set this up, and in this case, we're gonna move this one here. Let's move this down here, and you just need the same number of points. This one I'm actually going to pull forward. We may have to add some more geometry there. We can just adjust these handles as well and maybe move this up. Okay, so now we have our two splines. We have our top and bottom, and this is how we're going to do this. We're going to go back to our normal view so we could see this, and we need to put this into a sweep object. Now, the sweep needs at least two things for it to sweep, right? So we need a shape for it to sweep, and then we need a spline or something to sweep along. So in this case, we're going to use an end side because we don't need a lot of geometry. In fact, we want a low amount of geometry for this to run fast. So we could put this in the sweep. We could put one of the splines in there. But you can see that's not doing what we want it to do, right? This is just going along one spline. But if we put our second spline in here, this is our rail spline. This is how sweeps work. Sweep this along this, and if you just leave it alone, it's going to look at the wrong size. It's going to look at the size of this as a ratio. But if we put our rail spline in, now what it's doing is it's taking that shape and it's kind of putting it in between these two splines and giving us this base geometry. Pretty cool. And this is the main kind of way we're going to do this. The problem here is that our geometry is uneven, right? We have a lot of points here. We don't have, it's kind of spaced out. And the way we fix this is by grabbing both of our splines and going to none. Intermediate points, none, right? We just want all the regular geometry that we made. So it should be said here that you should always do this on the most curved part of the geometry. So you can look at his foot here, and it's pretty flat, right? You can see from the front, his arm and his foot are just kind of straight down cylinders, and that's really not going to help us too much. But from the side, it's kind of going in and out, and it's thin and it's thick. There's more contrast from the side on this particular object. Sometimes it's from the top down, maybe if somebody's arms are out, so find the most contrast. Same with looking forward on this raptor. This raptor here doesn't have a lot of points up and down, right? You obviously want to follow the most sweepable parts of your object. So if it's a human, maybe it's top to bottom from head to belly, and then add his legs and arms. With this particular object, we're going finding the longest, most obvious shapes and starting there. So keep that in mind when you're building this. Okay, so now that we have that, we need to kind of make sure we have ways to connect our legs and our arms. So this is where we're going to start to talk about geometry. And again, I don't know a lot about this stuff. Chris showed me some stuff, and if you want to follow his version, you could go watch the car smash. But I figured this was different enough, and also it's me, so I'm just excited. Okay, get over it. I'm excited to do some modeling. Finally, something that's kind of like modeling. But let me shut up. Okay, so let's do this. We need the arms and the legs after we build those to connect to the body. So let's make sure we can do that. I don't want to move that spline. So that's something I already messed up. So one thing you don't want to do is mess with any of these center points. You don't want the spline to be off left or right. And that's because we're going to end up using a symmetry object to cut this in half and then mirror those two. So let's just go ahead and make the leg using the same thing. So let's grab our spline, our Bezier spline, let's zoom into our leg and kind of start below the geometry. So we don't want this geometry to get in the way of our leg spline, right? So we're just going to start a little bit low, and then we'll close the hole a little bit later. So here we go. We're going to start there. We're going to put one right there. We're going to put one here. And this is where it gets a little tricky. This is where our collision points are going to matter a lot. If this thing is going to bounce around on his feet or fall and hit his foot and hit his face or whatever, you want to make sure these are as tight as possible to the real geometry. So the bottom here of the foot, I think, is one of the more critical pieces, and that's why I want to make sure that that curve, maybe I move exactly so it's just flush with the bottom of his foot there. And so there we go. So that's that spline. Let's copy and paste this and move this up. So in this case, we have to kind of make a big bubble there. This can kind of go down. Now again, if we're building the mesh, I don't think anything's going to catch him in his foot. I'm not sure how detailed we're going to get, but that's something we can do. We could try to do this with our curve and see if that helps, and then do this. and come out here. But remember, all these little curves, they're kind of going to go away. They're all going to be linear if we don't add any geometry to them. So remember that. So this might be enough. It might not be enough. Let's see. Let's copy and paste this sweep because it already has some good settings on it. Let's delete those splines and use our new splines. And don't forget to turn this to none. And then let's go back out and see what we built. So we built a leg right in the middle, and that's because we used our side view. But we could fix this. We can grab our splines, and let's make sure we grab our object, not in points, the entire object, and move it over and see if we can cover up his foot. So we got some kind of polygons to move around, but let's make sure it's kind of centered on his foot there. And, you know, we have plenty of room for this to come up and get up to his leg and do that. So that's good, kind of a base idea there. Let's do the same with the arm. And, you know, this is where it can get tedious here. This is why modeling has never been my strong point, because it is a little tedious. But I think we're going to end up with a pretty cool result. It's going to be worth it, I promise. So here's his arm. And we take the spline and we copy this over and move this one. Oop. Point. I just made an extra one. So let's make sure we're on move mode. Let's make sure we're on move mode instead of this. So just click the move tool, and I'm going to move this one over. I'm going to grab this one and move this one over, maybe up a little bit to get it closer to the mesh. Same thing, we're going to copy and paste this mesh. Delete those. We don't want those. We want these new ones. We want none. And we're going to go back, and we're going to see what we have. Again, we have an arm right in the middle, but we want it to match on the same side. So again, go to your move tool and go to, I think this is model mode. Yep. And move all of them over and just kind of roughly line it up with this arm. And we can always shape this geometry later. And we will do that. And to do that, we actually need to combine all this stuff together and make it real geometry. Right now, it's all parametric. And you've seen, so excuse me if you actually know what the heck you're talking about. If you've modeled before, maybe you want to go watch a different tutorial. But for anybody that hasn't really played with these tools, you know, modeling, all this stuff's been really tricky to me. So there's a lot of rules we're breaking for real modeling. You know, we're going to end up building triangles where we don't want them. We're going to end up having an imperfect mesh for this. But again, we're using this for a very specific reason. We want this dinosaur to have a cage around it, to have some soft body stuff happen. It's not supposed to be photoreal or anything. So, you know, that's not what we're going for. So again, apologize if I'm screwing too much stuff up, but this works. This works. So here's what we're gonna do. We need to take this parametric. Oh, that's what I was talking about. We need to take the parametric objects and turn them into real geometry. Right now, all these parametric objects are creating this geometry on the fly based on these settings. So if we change one of these things, everything moves. It changes. We need this to be like a real mesh, and the way we can do that is to grab the good old connect object. Man, this thing, what doesn't the connect object do? Well, we throw all of our sweeps into our connect object, and what you can also do is just kind of make a copy of this. I made a second connect object, and I'm just gonna like hide that second one, right? So I'm just gonna hide that second connect object, and now we just kind of have a backup, right? If everything goes wrong with this, you know, this might be a good time to save as well. And then we take this other connect object, and we just hit C, and that connects it. Right? So we take everything, connects it all. Let's take off our Fong tag so we can see all the raw geometry. And let's also look at our mesh and figure out what we need to do. Well, first of all, we need to connect these arms to the body, and we need to connect this leg to the body here. So I think the leg has a pretty good point to connect. It's going to be this polygon is going to connect to all these polygons, and this polygon here is going to connect to here, but there's kind of not enough geometry there. So we can actually do that by going back to our side and just making a new piece of geometry. So we can connect our mesh here, and you can see, let's turn off our Velociraptor, and this right here, we just need more, geometry right there. And this is where we need the knife tool. So I'm gonna hit K for knife. K for knife brings up the knife tool, and we want to make sure we have nothing selected, and we want to make sure we are, do we need to be in point mode? I think we need to be in point mode. Yes. Sorry, folks, you know, I'm learning this literally this week, and you can see how much of a dummy I am with it, but this has been pretty cool. So K for knife. Now we got to check out some of these options. Restrict to selection. That's fine. We don't have anything selected, so that's not going to mess with us. Single cut, that's fine. Select cuts, visible only. This is what we want to turn off. If we leave visible only on, it's only going to cut one side of this dinosaur. It's only going to cut this side of the geometry. We want to cut both sides. So we turn off visible only and we make a cut, right? We can just drag all the way across that geometry, make a cut, boom. His leg, we could also do that for the leg as well, but I think we're okay. I think bridging this from here to here will be fine. So let's get back to our other view and let's start bridging these things together. So now, instead of selecting points, we want to grab polygons. And I would grab this polygon selection tool here, and you could change its radius if you don't want it that big. And we're just going to select all these polygons on the top of the leg or whatever you're trying to connect. And then I'm going to select this other polygon. So see how they're both selected. And the way I did that is I held shift down, right? So I selected all these, and I held shift down the whole time, and select and let go. And now I have all those selections together. Now that we have that, we can hit M, and this will bring up a bunch of different kind of modeling tools and stuff. M on your keyboard will bring this up, and then you just look and find the one that makes sense. So, you know, Chris knows all these, like, he doesn't even need to look at this. He just goes MD, right? There it is. D is close polygon hole. So click D. Nope, I'm sorry. Don't click D. We're going to use D later. We need to make... let's see, bridge. I think it's bridge. So B for bridge, and now let's click here, and you can see it's trying to guess where it wants to bridge. So from here, I figure we could bridge all the way to the edge, and it's going to connect the rest. Check that out. Made a bridge for all those pieces. Check the geometry, make sure nothing's overlapping. I think we're looking pretty good with the legs. So now we have to do the same thing with the arm. Let's grab our polygon tool and our selection tool. Live selection's fine. Hold down shift. Move your camera, hold down shift, click, check it out, boom. Now we do the same thing. So remember M, and then B for bridge, and then we could connect this, bam, to this. And you know, you want to make sense, right? We want the outside to go to the outside, snap, and then it bridges all that together. So decent looking geometry. I think we're okay. Look at it from inside as well. You know, we have some weird stuff here. This little thin piece here, you know, I don't know. What do we do with that? I'm not sure. I'm sure like real modelers have a problem with this. For what we need it to do, I think we're okay. So there we go. So now we got our cage, okay? But if we're gonna make a symmetry object, we have too much geometry on this side. We have to get rid of half the geometry so that we could symmetry it out. And the way we do that is we go to our top view here, and we're just going to grab everything that's not on this side of the raptor and just delete it. And to do that, we need to grab point mode. We need to grab rectangle selection. Will be easiest for this. And we want to check our settings again. Only select visible elements. Now, the reason, you know, a little side note, the reason modeling is so tricky to me is because it is not parametric. You have to make sure you do things in order because this is real geometry. You can't just have it all there to change at any moment. So many other things I do is parametric. We could change it at any time. We could change the text. You know that. You know I love that. This is not the case. With geometry, we have to do things in order. We have to make sure all the stuff is set up properly. So only select visible elements. We want to turn that off. We want to select all the geometry on this side of the dyno, but we don't want to select the middle stuff. Right? Selected too much. So let's see if we could just grab everything on this side, including the back of the tail there. Let's make sure we're zoomed in. Okay, so that's selected. I didn't grab the nose part. So again, I'm going to hold shift and select more. Make sure everything on that side of the body is there. And we're just going to delete. Boom, delete. It's deleted. Come on in and check out what we got. We have a half of a cage of a dinosaur. This is what we wanted to build. This is its shell. This is like its protective case that we're going to use for soft bodies. Softbody geo. So there it is. Cool. Looks good. What do we do now? Now we have to throw this into a symmetry object to make it symmetrical. And again, remember we didn't want to move any of these center points because we want them on a clean axis so that the symmetry does all the work. because we're in the middle, because we didn't move these center points, this is something, you want to make sure you don't move these middle points, because then the symmetry object will work properly. If one of these points, for example, let's just mess it up. If one of these points is off, we're going to have a hole, or we're going to have overlapping geometry. We don't want that. We want perfect symmetry, and that's what we get because we didn't mess with those middle points. Okay, so there we go. There's our cute little caged dino. And again, we need to select our symmetry, and we need to connect it. But before we do that, let's turn off our symmetry and let's turn our raptor back on, because you can see there's still parts of the head and the leg and the arm and little pieces that are not perfect. And we want to do all of our changes now before we bake this mesh with symmetry. So now what we can do is go to point mode. Make sure your mesh is connected. All these things, you have to make sure that mesh is connected, or selected, I'm sorry. Make sure your mesh is selected to be able to pull all this stuff off. Now what we want to do is pull up on this geometry to kind of create the geo to make sure that the collisions will be proper when it hits. So if something were to hit his head right now, it wouldn't really register because the cage is inside. You also don't want it too far above because that will look unrealistic as well, but you want it as close as you can get it. Okay, a little bit is fine, but a lot will mess up the illusion. This, again, you want to make sure you don't pull on that middle axis. You want to make sure you do it from the side so you're not moving that axis very much. That's too much. We can move. Now, these outside ones, we can move all we want. They're not part of the symmetry, or they're not part of the center part of the symmetry, so I think they'll be fine. That one needs to move, maybe out and back a little bit there. Check to make sure you're not breaking any polygons. Make sure you're not having any crisscross polygons. They make you jump, and you want to grab. That was awful. I'm sorry. I'm going to move this down, cover his belly up in case he gets a little cold. Let's go down to the feet and talk about that. So this foot right there, that little thing, I want to kind of get that as part of the mesh, because as part of the if it were to hit something and it wasn't part of the soft body collision, I think that would look unrealistic, right? So I want to be close, but without too much geometry. I also want to make sure the bottom of his feet are pretty clean and accurate, because he might be hanging out on his feet a lot, right? As part of our thing. Maybe we're gonna throw this down a flight of stairs. Maybe we're gonna let him flop on the ground or something. We want to make sure wherever these high contact point areas, they're there and they're accurate. So below his jaw here, I'm gonna move this up and back just to clean that up a little bit. And this can kind of go up. That's looking good. And okay, so there we are. So now we did it. I think I'm comfortable with his hip hanging out. I don't think we'll ever see that. Maybe his hand needs a little bit of love here. Is it a hand? I don't know. Is it a claw? Maybe it's a claw. Who knows, right? Moving this around, this looks great. And, again, too, if there's too much room, you might want to pinch this in as well, right? So, you grab this front one, and that looks pretty good, actually. I don't want to mess with that. Okay, so there we go. We're looking good. Cage looks nice. What do we do now? We have our symmetry object. We turn it on. We check. We look around. And we have a hole back here, but we could fix that. That's okay. Also, this tail... this piece right here, right in the back, we want to make sure we do it from our side view so we don't mess up our symmetry. It's sticking out. I don't want that. I don't want a tail to stick out. I want it to be accurate, as close as possible. I promise this all becomes more fun once we close this cage up and we make it editable, which we can do right now. So symmetry, here it is. You can also save this connect object out if you want to change it later, but I think we're okay for this. Let's hit C. And now we have our symmetry and our connect object. And let's turn off our raptor and let's see what we have. The front looks fine. Now you may have a hole in the front of your raptor face, but you can close it the same way I'm going to close this tail. This tail, you can see we have a hole because the symmetry didn't connect that as perfect as we could. That's okay. If you have holes, here's how you change it. You grab your object, you grab your mesh, you hit M, and you look for the thing that makes sense. Close polygon hole, D, right? So you hit D, and look at how easy this is. You just hover over it, and you click it, you're closed. You're done. That's it. So we have our mesh. We have our dyno. Now what? Now what? Okay, well now we want the mesh to have soft body on it, and then we want this mesh to deform the high poly raptor, okay? So one thing to keep in mind here before we set this up is the way soft bodies work is it kind of takes every point on your object and puts it like a spring between it and the next point. That's kind of how it works. It's like a spring between here and here, spring between here and here, here, all these little pieces, right? So the more springs, the more floppy it is. The more rigid it is, if there's a piece between here and here, then this piece is actually going to be rigid, and it's going to bend all in one piece. It's going to be like one hinged piece, and then this will stay straight. Wherever the geometry is, will stay straight geometry. That's just how the soft body works. So the more polys you have, the more floppy things get. And for me, I think it's going to be a lot funnier if this raptor's tail is like flopping around. So I need more geometry back here. So the way we could do that, we can go to our side view. Let's open that up. And then we grab our knife tool and do the same thing. We want to make sure our knife K is our knife tool. We want to make sure that visible only is off. And we just want to like cut some even geometry here. You know, close enough, right? So there's one, and as we get to the edge, I'm going to actually add a couple more points because I want this back to be really, really floppy. Let's also do this to his neck. I feel like the neck is going to be a point where we want it to be a little bit springy. And his snout as well, we could just cut this into a little bit more geometry so it does bend a little bit more. So his leg too could probably get stretched out. So remember, though, you don't want to overdo this or we're back to basically our regular mesh, which we could just use the whole time. You want it to be as low poly as possible, but have enough springiness to do it. So another way to think of it is how floppy do you want this to be? You know, we're going to have settings and stuff we'll play with, but these points matter a lot. Okay, so there we go. Did we do it? I hope so. Let's set up the soft body and do it. So let me show you. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a floor. We're going to take our simulation tags. We're going to add a collider body. We're going to go to our mesh here. Let's go to mesh. Let's just name it mesh and add a soft body. Boom. Soft body tag. Now we're going to hit play. Also, you might want to just hit G to go forward a frame and see what happens. Make sure it's playing well, and then hit play. So there we go. I mean, what else do you need? We got a low poly. I just giggle with this stuff. I don't know how it looks like Barney is not having a good day here. But it's all soft body. That's default settings on the soft body. And while this is pretty funny because it's this like low poly cage, what really is going to make this better is if we use this mesh to deform our raptor. And then here's how we do that. We take our raptor and our main mesh, and we add a deformer to it. This deformer is called mesh deformer. You put this in the hierarchy with your whatever you want to deform. If this is the robot, if you're following along with the raptor, you put it in the same hierarchy as all of the other geometry here, and that is your mesh. Now the mesh deformer is going to ask you what your cage is. Your cage, that's what I should name this, cage, okay? Your mesh is going to say put your cage here, boom, okay? Also, make sure you're doing this on frame 0. It's very important with dynamic stuff that you all start at frame 0 when you set all this stuff up. Also, you know, maybe his feet shouldn't be under the floor. So let's just don't move the mesh, right? What you don't want to do right now is move any of the mesh. So I'm just going to drop the floor a little bit. We can move the mesh later once it's connected, but here's what we need to do. We need to grab our mesh, make sure a cage is in it, make sure at frame 0, and hit initialize. Here's what it's going to do. It's going to create a bunch of stuff on our cage to basically make it disappear. You can see the cage is literally still there as a cage, but now it's controlling our raptor. So now when we hit play, that oh boy, we get a problem that I've gotten a lot. This problem is that all of the geometry is not inside of the cage. And while this is pretty cool, actually that's really cool, what we really want it to do is kind of say, it doesn't matter if it's inside or out. You should do it. You should like connect all those polygons roughly where they are anyway. So to do that, you have to go to advanced. You have to go to external and go to surface. So use surface mode instead. And in this case, we're going to reinitialize at frame 0. Make sure you're back at frame 0. Now hit play. And now we have our poor dino flopping around and hitting the ground. And the cage now is moving the main geometry. And that's the thing to keep in mind. This low poly cage is moving the main geometry around. Okay. So now we can do things like put the main mesh in a subdivider, and look at all this nice round geometry we have now. Now when we hit render, we have this really nice high poly dino. We could add all this texture, we could add all this crazy stuff to this model, and the cage is still what's driving it. So we get pretty fast playback for soft body collisions, which can take a long time to calculate. But that's why we have this low poly thing. Anyway. So what can we do with this? Well, you can throw them down a flight of stairs. You could smash stuff on top of them, like we did in the truck or the van smash, where we threw like safes at them and stuff like that. You could set up a cannon and throw things at them. You could do a bunch of stuff with soft bodies. But I wanted to show you something that I was playing with just before actually I was recording this tutorial. And so again, if you just need the cage stuff, you could stop. You could start to play around. You could do with whatever you want. But if you want a little bonus today, I'm going to show you something pretty funny that was basically making me giggle a lot. So here's what I did. What I wanted was to take the stiffness of our model. So let's go into our soft body settings and look at what we have here. So we're not going to get in all these settings here right now. You could check out the manual. You could look at other things to see what all these do. In fact, the reason we're not getting too far into them is because I'm still learning a lot more about what all these do. One thing that I played with a lot is stiffness. So stiffness is basically how rigid the dinosaur is when it falls. So you can see now he's pretty floppy. If I were to take stiffness and say 10, well, you could see he's more he's a little bit soft body, like his arm kind of flops there a little bit. Let me unselect him. So let me just turn off the lines here so we're not seeing that. There we go. So you can see his arms are a little bit like soft, a little bit floppy. But the more I turn up stiffness, the more rigid the cage is, and the less soft he is, right? So here's the idea I had. I wanted him to be super floppy, and then all of a sudden have the stiffness level go way up. So he just almost like if something were to deflate and then inflate very quickly. If you took I don't know, like a balloon, and flopped it down, and then it inflated very quickly, it would just kind of like bounce off the ground. And that's the look we're kind of going for. So to do this, we need to turn down its general settings. So drop your structural down to 10. Same with shear. Same with all the dampening. So the dampening is kind of how quickly it springs back. We can just drop all these settings down. And again, we'll get into these settings in other videos. But for now, we just want a more floppy. When it hits the ground now, he's going to like melt into like this little puddle, this poor little pathetic little dino guy, like a deflated balloon, right? But then what I want him to do is from this position, I want him to kind of instantly turn up the stiffness. So we could actually just pause it, turn up the stiffness, and hit play. And you can see he bounces around, and that's what we want. But we want it to happen over and over and over again. So how do we do that? We can animate the stiffness to go up and down and up and down. Now, you can animate this with keyframes. I reached for Signal because this is exactly why I built Signal. I grabbed Signal, and if you ever want to use Signal with anything else that is on the same line as it, you have to just lock down your parameter that you want to bring in. So you just lock this down, you select your signal that you want it to drag it onto, and you take stiffness and drag it into Signal. So now all the stiffness properties are driven by Signal. We can unlock this. We can go into Signal and say, okay, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to animate the stiffness going from 0 up to 20, and then I need it to go back down and then loop over and over and over and over again. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to kind of pinch this up and down and make basically this kind of wave, right? So here's what we got. Let's check out what Signal's doing. It says frame 0, play through, and then somewhere around frame like 45, right? This is our timeline. It's gonna jump way up to 20, and then it's gonna fall directly down back to 0 again. Okay, so in this period here is how fast it's gonna oscillate between these. The last thing we need to do is just say, we need you to loop this over and over and over again. Okay, so now that we have all this set up, he's gonna flop on the ground, and then he's gonna jump, and then he's gonna flop down again, and then he's gonna jump, and he's so pathetic. Okay, we can also make our timeline a little bit longer. In this case, oh man, this is great. He's flopping around, but you can see once he's on his side, he's just kind of like laying there like hopeless, like almost like he's like trying to breathe or something. So how do we keep him upright so he's always kind of like hopping on his feet? Well, this is a little bit of a cheat, but it works really well. You go to your force and you say follow rotation, and you just like turn this up a little bit. So now his instinct is going to try to be like staying on his feet. He's going to try to rotate back to where he's flat. So he's always trying to hit that point. Now sometimes he's going to end up on his side. Now he's screwed, and you can just turn this up more. So now you may have to restart it, but he's always going to try to land on his feet. This is like the cat slider, right? Follow rotation. You want him to land. Oh, there you go. Come on, buddy. Oh, no, a little bit higher. All right. You can see instantly he's trying to stand on his feet. Oh, poor little buddy. All right, so anyway, this is hours of fun. If you want to change your settings here, you could, like if you want him to jump higher, you could say like 40, like stiffness 40. It's going to go even higher. So here we go. Boom. Nice big jump. And then if you want this to go slower, right, you could just set this to 60, and now he's just going to lay there longer, like in a puddle. And then he'll jump up again, right? So you can do a lot of stuff at this point. You can grab like a cube or something, and you can like maybe he like smashes on the ceiling. So we put this here, we put a dynamic setting on there, and now when he jumps, let's get our camera angle right. Now when the dino flings in the air, it's not just going to fling in the air, it's going to smash against the ceiling. Oh, a little too close. Let's give a little bit more room. we want that jump to be even quicker, so we can go to signal and we can make this curve like way more sharp, and then the fall off more. So here's what's happening. It's the more sharp this curve is, the quicker it's going to jump in the air. Boom, smash, right? And then the more this falls off, the quicker it gets all rubbery. So let's see what this does. Smash, boom, right? So there you go. Play around with that. Like I said, just kind of a general, general tutorial today just to get that soft body thing, but really play around with it.
Thanks again for watching, everybody. And hey, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. We have new tutorials just like this coming out every week to help you become a better motion designer. So with that, I hope to see you in another one of those tutorials really soon. And until then, happy rendering. Bye, everybody. I'm feeling good. Feeling good. My hair's feeling good. Blooper time, blooper time, blooper time. It's a blooper time, blooper time, blooper. What if I name my dog Blooper? That's a good name for a dog, Blooper. I like that. Blooper, come here, Blooper. Blooper, get out of the trash, Blooper. What did I tell you about that?